welcome back. We got another episode of the Life Roast coming at you. I'm John. This is Big T right here.
What's up?
Today, we're going to be diving into the world of communication. So, it's not as fabulous as I just made it out to seem with the sparkle fingers, but it is one of those topics that we have to talk about because, we see time and time again the issues that people have with communication, the lack of communication, the lack of knowledge when it comes to communication, the inability to communicate properly. And I feel like we're in a time today where communication has taken a total plunge, even more so than it already is, right? Like you've always had people that have an issue with communication to begin with, but I'm talking politics, relationships, business, friendships, all the things, right? People are having an issue communicating, period. And that's conveying messages, all this stuff, right? So we're going to dive into all that. Make sure, first of all, you like and subscribe to this so we can continue bringing all these wonderful topics to your phone, probably. That's where you're watching it.
Or listening.
So do that. I'm going to let T take it away here and go.
All right. So it was something told to me years ago, and it stuck in my head back when I was in a straight up sales role. And, the old saying, you've heard it before, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen more than you speak. I think what happens, though, is the next step of that is 1 mouth, 2 ears, but those 2 ears feed to 1 brain. So what happens, for some reason, what came out of my mouth went into your ears and got interpreted inside your brain way different than what actually came out of my mouth. And let me give you an example. And again, we've had many discussions about politics and all the crapola that goes on with this. And it's amazing how the left is so angry with the Trumpy of the world and the right's excited. And, go back to the Biden days, it was a complete reverse. And it's like, well, nothing really changed. Everyone said the same shit. We just interpreted it differently. And I think that kind of brings back the conversation today of what we're trying to communicate to you is how do you pause? How do you reflect? It's the old, can I ponder what was actually said before I react to it? And I think I'm seeing that more often than not. And John said, what are we talking about today? And I said, it's got to be about communication and interpretation. Like, man, we are interpreting just stuff in a way that is so over the top nuts, whether you are, again, the political side or any of that stuff. But even like John said, relationships, like, fellas, how many times have you had a conversation with your wife and you thought, okay, what's coming out of my mouth is just plain and simple. And then, like 15 minutes later, they're all over you. Like, I can't believe you said that. Us guys, we don't remember shit. Like, said what?
What did I say?
What did I say? Right. I mean, we all know. All you guys listen, like, fuck, what did I say? What did I say? And then they tell you, and you're like, no, that's not what I said. But, perfect example. God love my wife. When we go out, she puts on 37 outfits. I don't know if Teresa does this, but my wife puts them on, and every single time she said, what do you think? And I think, love it. That's it. That's the one. And 20 minutes later, she calls me to the bottom of the stairs again, and it's a new one. It's a new outfit. Like, well, I wasn't sure about this. And my point is, like, okay, I told you that's the one. I think you look amazing. You look excellent. You look sexy, whatever the term is. And then finally she decides on the outfit, and at dinner, I should have wore the other outfit. Like, what? The one you liked originally. You're like, well, okay, hold on a second. I'm confused. We have this conversation every time we go out. And every time I tell you what I like or dislike it, you disregard it. And then later on, you come back to me and give me some random answer of, well, I should have. Like, okay, I don't understand how you hear me. But when I say it's good, it's good. Like, stop. We're done. Like, let's move on. Let's go out. And I see this everywhere. So I'm getting off on a thing on relationships and my wife, but I think that's the part. Where I drag it back to is in business, and that's our world. That's what we deal with. Even from a personal training side and the gyms that we own and stuff like that. Like, how many people have you worked with where you're like, okay, you got to stop doing this and you got to start doing this? Do they listen?
Well, I don't know. I think a lot of the people that I work with in all areas of life hear what they want to hear, first of all, right? I mean, like, everybody hears what they want to hear before anything else. And all of us have this story in our head. right? So we hear the things that match up with the story to support, all whatever we're trying to create. And so, yeah, I think some of them listen, but then like I'll be working with somebody for a while, like weeks, months, sometimes years. I've had clients for years, and I'm still telling them the same thing over and over again. And that's just, I don't know if, sometimes it's me. Like I always come back to like, what am I saying? What am I not saying? How am I coming across? Like all that stuff, right? Like, because I can't control how they understand, but it absolutely happens on a regular basis. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like,
well, I think that's the part of it is do we hear it? I mean, we definitely hear it. But then, you put it in the calculator up here and you stir it around and you're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I should probably do this and then I should do that. And that all lines up. But you know what? He doesn't know what's really going on in my head. And like, how could he say that? And what, like, this is what I think we should do. And you know what? I'm right and he's not. And he's speaking from this world. And like, okay, keep doing what you're doing then. But you asked for advice and we handed it and you spit it back to us in the same old shit way you do it. I see that a lot at the gyms when we go there, and like people, can't seem to lose any weight. Like, okay, well, where you at on your workout? Where you at on your nutrition? Where you at on your water intake? Where you at? I had a party this weekend, and I said, well, didn't you have a party last weekend? You had a party the weekend before that, and you didn't follow this and you didn't follow that, and you're wondering why you're not losing weight. Like, I could keep telling you the same thing over and over and over, but are you choosing not to listen, or are you choosing not to act?
It's funny because there's like a quote. It's like, all right, when you don't get the results you want, try doing what your trainer told you to do in the first place, right? It's like, so like it's the reality of most cases, and you brought up a good point, and I think this is a big thing with it is when we're communicating, a lot of people are afraid to speak their mind. Mm-hmm. And I think you talk about relationships. I think this is like a huge one, but businesses, when it comes to, trainer client, when business coach client, whatever it is, people are afraid to say any response, right? So like, especially the people who are in positions of authority, I think, right? So like if I'm your coach or if I'm your trainer or if I'm your whatever, like people have a hard time, like, coming back and saying something. Like I've had clients where, we'll be working together for a long period of time. And then all of a sudden, like they'll finally speak up about something. They'll be like, well, like I don't really understand this. And I'm like, how long have you not understood this? Right. And they'll be like, since the beginning. And I'm like, well, why didn't you say something? Right? Like I'm here for you. You're paying me to help you reach your goals. I tell all my clients this regardless. Right? The first and foremost, like you have to be honest with me. Like you have to be open. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to do anything but help you along the way. Like you have to communicate with me. I say this all the time if I'm training somebody over the gym, like you have to communicate how things feel. Because if you're not engaging things properly, and this goes for business, this goes for faith, for family, for everything. Like if you're not feeling it, there's something needs to be addressed. And if you're not telling me, then we can't address it. And you're going to go months without getting the results you want because you're not communicating with me.
Right. But here's the question I ask. Why do you think they're not saying something? Like, honestly, what do you think that inner thought is?
I think a lot of people don't communicate things because, one, they do fear judgment. They fear being embarrassed, or, maybe they don't know how to properly communicate it. Like they don't know if it's an issue. Like I think a lot of people are just stuck in their head when it comes to, they're telling themselves a story that, if you ask this, you're going to look stupid, or, sure. Like I think that's a big, I'm not saying that's all of it. I'm just saying, a lot of the times people are afraid to ask. Again, people in authority, in a position of authority, they're just afraid of looking some kind of way, whatever that kind of way is. I don't know.
No, I get it. And I agree with you. I think that's a part of it. I think another big part, and I see this with a lot of my clients, is it's the fear of confrontation.
Well, yeah.
No one likes confrontation. No one likes to call someone out, or no one likes to contradict what the other person says. And I think that's the struggle, where you sit there and like, oh, well, I should probably say something, but they seem pretty serious about it. So I'm just going to hold my thought, and then you hold your thought. And then weeks later, months later, years later, you're like, you want to say something to them. You're like, well, shit, it's been going on forever now. Just keep my mouth shut. And you realize that nothing's changing, or they're not doing what they're supposed to. And it's weird. We got new cameras here, so this is like badass. I'm trying to like pay attention and look around. Like I don't know when the light comes on, or I watch John's hand movement. Anyway, back to the show. The idea here, and especially with my clients, is, and it's probably something I say not enough, but if you see something, say something. It's not that you're calling someone out. If you're calling someone out, like, dude, you suck and you're a dick, like that's not calling someone out. That's just being mean. Yeah, but if there's an issue, we'll call it out. You don't have to put a name on the issue. You don't have to say whose fault it was, but if something continually happens, why are you just accepting that it's there? I'm that guy in the meeting that everyone turns to without physically turning and say, T, could you ask the question? Because I have this philosophy that if I'm thinking it, everyone else in the room is thinking it, and then I just fire out the statement or the question. And sometimes I was the only one thinking it. But many times I have people that reach out afterwards and go, thank God you asked that question. Like, I don't understand why would you not communicate your question? And I guess it goes back to, like you said, is it a judgment thing? But why is it a judgment thing? Where did we go wrong that we believe that I shouldn't say something? Was it a schooling thing? Speak, only raise your hand when you're ready to speak, or like, who knows? Mom and dad, shut up. I only speak when spoken to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of conditioning that goes into it. I mean, we essentially live in a society where, ridicule is everywhere. I mean, if you weren't a part of some situation growing up, I don't know, maybe it was a public school thing or whatever. I hear about private schools, so I know what it's like. But, right. Growing up, like if you ask a stupid question in class, you get laughed at. If you're loud and inquisitive, I mean, this is one of those things. Like I try not to rag on my kids about asking questions. They're always like, kids, why? I'm like, there are no stupid questions. Right. And sometimes I get a little like, shut up, but I think, growing up for me, it wasn't necessarily shut up, but just stop asking questions. This is just how it is. Right. And with school, it was the same way. Like, this is just how it is. And, you feel the ridicule of looking stupid or being embarrassed for asking a question in class. Like, but something that I learned about asking questions is like, I can't learn anything if I don't ask questions. It's this weird thing, right? Like if I don't ask the question and I don't know, I'm just going to continue not knowing, right? So like, it's stupid not to ask the question. So I don't know where going back to that thing, it's kind of like, kids just being kids,
sure,
being dicks, right? Like, but I'm sure there's some kind of conditioning that goes into adulthood. And, even today we talk about it all the time, like keeping up with the Joneses and doing the things that we do now. Like if we felt that in high school, people are still doing the same thing today.
Right.
When you're in a business meeting, if there's 10 people, 8 of them probably still feel that. Mm-hmm. 8 of them are still probably sitting in a high school classroom in that meeting thinking like, oh, if I open my mouth and I say something stupid, everybody here is going to judge
this
me.
Is my clique. I can't say anything. I'm in the nerd group, or I'm in this quiet group.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's ridiculous. And then on top of it, we were talking earlier, and we were having a funny conversation earlier. Like, if you're not communicating properly, it's easy for the other person to assume,
right,
or jump to conclusions. And going back to the relationship thing, I mean, how many times have you said something where your wife would just like jump to a conclusion because
instantly
there was no conclusion? You just said stuff, it made sense to you, and you just carried on, and then. I mean, we were talking about a situation recently that just happened, and like people just assume things because they only go on the information that they have.
Right. Right. I think, this brings up a thought, going back to the whole interpretation. And I use this with clients a lot. It's the difference between expectation and agreement. And an expectation is between you, and agreement is between you and the other person. And what I mean by that is, in our head, you're listening and you put something in your mind where you say, okay, I would expect this is what you do. And when they don't meet that expectation, you're pissed. And part of it is you didn't really communicate your expectation. You, going back to assume, you just assumed you guys were vibing, like you totally got what we were talking about. I mean, I know it was a 10-step program and I only gave you 2 of them, but come on. I figured you'd get the other 8. I mean, it's only normal because it's such a simple process. You know, I needed you to change the timing on a Ford Taurus 1987 because we all have that knowledge in our head. I don't know. I just made that shit up. But my point there is that that's this expectation. Like I expect that when you pull the car in the driveway, it's going to work like a brand new vehicle because I told you I need it fixed. Whereas an agreement is more along the lines of let's communicate and talk, and let me get your understanding of what you believe I said, as opposed to what I think I said, and that's that interpretation where one mouth, 2 ears, back to one brain. Like, what did your brain interpret of what I said? And it said, well, you want me to look at a car that I've never even seen on the road in the last 20 years, and I'm supposed to fix it, and I don't know how because I don't have the tools or the capacity or the knowledge or anything. Is that what you're asking me? Yeah, sounds pretty simple, huh? Not really. If you heard what I was saying, like I have no clue what I'm doing, so you're going to have to help a brother out. Instead, most of the time we don't have that. We go to meetings every day, and if you're watching this, ask yourself, how many meetings have you gone to where you walked out and go, what was that meeting for? Did we all just get in a room together and just show up and throw up, and then we walked away like, whew, was that just a bitch meeting? Was that an objective meeting? Did we come out with some action items? Did we have anything? Or did one of the big shots just show up and spewed a bunch of nonsense, and he had the expectation that we got our action items and we all know where to go, and we're going to meet back at some ungiven deadline that, again, clueless. And I think that's usually what happens in business. It's what keeps me in business, because I meet with people and say, well, did you give them a goal? Did you give them a deadline? Did you give them an understanding of what your expectation was? Well, no, they should just know. Come on.
Well, and I think in those situations too, it's like, I think in so many situations, we have just been doing things a certain way for so long, right? And people will see this in business all the time, right? Like you just have a meeting every Monday, right? Like there's just a Monday morning meeting,
yep.
Right? And every week it's the same thing, and you just assume everybody knows it's the same thing. You don't put action items out, you don't put any topic points out, you don't do anything. There's no preparation, there's no before communication, there's no after communication. We just have this meeting. That's how we've always done it. That's what we always do, right? And we fall into these traps of just doing the same thing over and over again. And again, going back to the assumptions, jumping to conclusions and all these things. It's like, is anything really being done? Are we effective in any way by doing this the same way that we've always done it? Or is there a better way of going about this, right? Because again, how many meetings do you go out of and you're just like, I don't even know what happened. I don't know what we accomplished. I don't know. We talk about effective communication. Right? We're talking about a communication. We have to talk about effective communication, right? Because that's what a lot of people are lacking, the ability to communicate, And so if you're walking out of a situation, right, even if it's just with friends or family or wife or you just got done having a conversation with somebody at the bar, it doesn't matter. If you coming out of the conversation not knowing what happened, right? Like looking back at that, it was totally ineffective, Right. And so what are you doing repeatedly where you're in that situation constantly? There's a tool, and I'm sure you absolutely know, but this is the stuff that they don't teach you in schools, right? So what I'm hearing from you is XYZ.
Right.
That simple sentence right there has cleared up so many misunderstandings. Mm-hmm. And that's all it takes sometimes, right? So like at the end of the meeting, so what I'm hearing, so this is what I'm getting, right? Like reaffirming what was being talked about and all this stuff. Like it's not something that people put into, regular practice during business meetings in relationship conversations and all that stuff. Is just asking, that like, so what am I hearing? So this is what we're doing. So just to be clear, those things. And it's like, we don't do that. We just fall into these habitual cycles of talking the same way over and over again without getting anywhere. We do this in relationships a lot, where your partner needs to hear you a certain way. Right. So if you continue to talk the same exact way 100 times, knowing that you're not getting through, you got to change something, right? So if you're having 100 meetings and people are walking out clueless, you got to change something,
right?
Regardless, I mean, there's better ways.
But what you just said, great point. It's like you validate that what the other person said was heard, mm-hmm. which to me is kind of an agreement. Like, I just want to make sure I'm on the same page as you. You said jump twice, cackle like a dog, and something else. Okay, great. Am I hearing that? No. I said cackle like a cat. Do cats cackle? I don't know. I just thought of that. But the point there is, okay, I've got an agreement. Like we've come to the conclusion that this is what you want, and I'm okay with that. I think it just made me think of this, and I'm afraid to even say it. Like, fellas, how many times is your wife talking and you are staring straight at her? I mean, you are attentive. You are like, I mean, she is saying a bunch of great stuff and you are really not paying attention at all.
Never.
Like,
I never do that.
You just see her mouthing something and she's talking about, your kid and sports and what time he's got to be picked up. And you're thinking about work, or you're thinking about, hold on, I'm supposed to play golf tomorrow morning and my clubs are dirty and I got to do this. And
we get the point,
or you're like,
man.
oh my God, I wish she'd stop talking because I have to pee. Like, there's always something that you're not paying attention. I know it happens infrequently, but
super rare.
She gets done and she has this expectation that you listened the whole way. And I know, fellas, we didn't hear a freaking word. And I would be okay with this. And it's scary because my wife will listen to this, that if she said, can you please tell me what I just said? Now, again, I would probably have to own up to, like, all right, sweetie, I heard, can you? And then after that, I heard nothing. But at some point, it would probably get me to pay attention. But I would also say, in return, if we're going to communicate effectively, okay, as a man, if you give me one or two requests, I'll call them bursts, so I can pay attention. By the time you get to your third, fourth, and fifth request, I'm gone. I've already lost. You've lost me. I got, okay, when I go to the grocery store, can I get this? And on the way back, can I pick up this? All right, I got you. Once you go to the third thing and the fourth thing, nope, unless you text it to me, it's not happening. I'm owning it. But that's where I say, okay, here's my communication back. This is what I heard. And then after that, I didn't really pay attention. But don't get upset with me. I'm just communicating back. The question is, can you not get upset?
Well, yeah. It's funny that you say that, right? Because first of all, I'm always attentive to my wife. I never miss a thing. She's going to watch this and light me up. But I love what you just said there, because this goes back to the thing about having a fear of communicating for whatever reason, right? I think, like me with my wife, right? When she says stuff and I'm not paying attention, she knows when I'm not paying attention, right? And then there's times where she'll be saying something, I'm like, hold up, stop. I'm going to forget that. When you talk about these things, try to say it like this, right? Like, instead of saying, don't forget, like, just say, remember, right? Like, because these are things that I've become aware of myself, right? Like, I'm more attentive when certain words are used or when certain tones are used and all that stuff, right? And I've become aware of how I understand, right? Because part of communication, half of the communication process is the understanding process, right? So I know how I learn, I know how I listen, I know how I pay attention, why I pay attention, what I pay attention to, right? So it's my job to communicate that to people around me, right? So, like, if I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying, or if I'm having a hard time keeping up with you, it's my job to stop and say, hey, I'm not catching anything you're saying right now. No, it all flew over my head. I wasn't paying attention. One more time, here I am, right? Because a lot of the time, my wife will come up and she'll start talking to me when I'm not. I didn't know she started talking to me, right? So, like,
been there.
I'll be like, paying attention, and I'll look at her and be like, wait, what? And I'll be like, babe, you got to, like, hey, hun, like, and then start talking. Make sure I'm, like, looking at you.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And, so, and it's the same thing anywhere else, right? Like, part of it is knowing how we understand it. And the other side of that is being open to how other people understand, right? Because it goes back to the part that I was saying, if I communicate the same way to everybody, it's going to be ineffective.
Oh, yeah.
Because some people are kinesthetic, some people are oral, some people are, like, auditory, and all, like, there's so many different ways that people learn and understand and hear things, and not being open to the idea that you might need different things when I'm communicating to you would be absurd, right? But we need to open up those chains of communication to not be embarrassed and say, hey, you know what? I'm not getting it. I need to be hands-on with this. I need to be, I need to see it on paper. I need to, for different things, it's like being willing to go and do that and say that and be open about it will help in every area of life. I mean, we can dive into politics. How many times have you heard the left and the right say things. The right starts getting mad or the left starts getting mad. Mm-hmm. And you're sitting there saying, you guys are saying the same fucking thing.
Right. Just depends on who's in charge.
It just depends on who's in charge, right. and who's saying what louder or softer or using certain trigger words or whatever it is, right? It's, a lot of the time it's just like, you heard nothing that they said. You just know that they're on the other side and you're not listening to a damn thing that they're saying, right? I see this all the time. I watch a lot of Charlie Kirk.
Yep.
If you don't know who Charlie Kirk is,
look him up. He'll set you off if you're on one side or the other.
He will set you off. But I'm listening to these people talk and I'm like, if you would have just said that differently, you guys probably would have found some common ground and been able to actually have a conversation instead of one of you just yelling at the other and the other one basically telling you that you're stupid. Right. Right. And that's where I feel like we fail as a society when it comes to communication, because everyone's just so emotionally, like they're just saying words that they think that they need to say, and nobody's actually saying things that for the other person to understand. Mm-hmm. Right? There's no, seek to understand before being understood. Right? That's St. Francis' prayer, right? Like I love it because it's like I have to understand you to be able to communicate effectively to you. Right. If I can understand you, I can break through your barriers and have conversations that might piss you off otherwise. Right. And we can have it.
Right. But here's the question. Is it a competition thing? Like when we have our communications, is it about getting you to understand that my way is right and I need to win and I'm going to get my message across? I mean, that's what I think goes on in politics. Like, oh yeah, I could give a shit. I post stuff on Facebook all the time just to get a rise out of people. But at the end of the day, I learn a boatload. I mean, the last few communications I've learned about the stock market from one of the guys I haven't talked to in years. We used to work together. And like, wow, some of the things going on in politics right now and some of the changes that Trump's making is really affecting the stock market. I get it. Okay. I would have never known that, but we had good dialogue and I watched and I'm like, well, it's not about a win or loss, but I think that's where the communication, especially in business, like I need to one up you. Like, no, just help me understand your viewpoint and I'll agree to a level. And maybe there's a compromise, or I won't agree at all. And I'll just say there is no compromise. This is how it's going to be for us to continue to do business together. And that's just my stance. But if you want to come back and help educate me a little bit better, it's okay. But I got to be willing to listen. And I think it's that expectation agreement that I coach people on is it's not only between you and the other person, but it's also the understanding in your own mind that you have to listen first and allow them to get their point across before you come up with your answer, whatever it may be. And a lot of that, and I've learned this the hard way, but it's been good that, before you react, sleep on it. I mean, holy shit, is that effective? Because in the moment you're hot, like, oh, motherfucker, let's go. I mean, if you're, what's the Blade dude?
The Blade dude.
Come on, it'll pop out. What's
Wolverine?
Wolverine, thank you.
Okay.
If you're Wolverine, after someone says, oh, that's bullshit, like shing, and they come out like you're ready to throw dukes and start slashing, like, whoa. Absorb. Follow it through. Like, let's do this. Lift yourself out of your own crazy ass mindset and drop yourself over on the other side and say, all right, let me think. Why would they react this way? Why would they say something like that? What is their position? What are they looking to do? Like, that happens over time. That happens overnight. And all of a sudden, and if you can do a couple of days, it's even better. But if you're looking at a situation that just rubs you, I'm talking fucking get you lofty, you should immediately think, nope. And I've written some text messages and I've written some emails and I've written some stuff. And I'm like, nope, don't hit send. And then I come back the next day and I read it and I'm like, wow, thank God you didn't send that. Because you not only sound like an asshole, like you just took it to a whole new level where it's like there would be a point of no return. Like this was scathing, like ridiculous. Then your mind comes back. You're like, okay, really all I was trying to say is I don't agree with you. Like, oh, okay.
Holy shit.
Simple.
I totally agree with that because I've done that before. I went through this period of trolling online. And I would get into these debates with people, and I think I talked about this last season in one of the episodes. We were talking about ADHD in kids, right? And I posted something online and somebody took it to a whole nother level. And we were going back and forth and go back and forth. And we were like kind of like at each other's throats, but having a conversation. And then finally at the end, I finally wrote something and they're like, oh, you were really on the same side. You were just approaching it from a different way. And I'm like, whew, well, that was
Yeah.
a whole lot of wasted words because and I'll be honest, it was because I was writing those messages in a heated frame of mind where I was overly emotionally invested into it. And I wasn't wording things how they should have been understood. I was wording them how I thought I would communicate them outwards.
Right.
Like I wasn't thinking about how they were perceiving it. I wasn't thinking about how they were going to interpret what I was saying. I was only thinking about getting my message across and being so adamant about what I was trying to express that I didn't pay attention.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like they're saying, no, like we're on the same page here. Like, what do you mean? And then I, broke through, and I can't tell you how many times that's happened before. And I see it all the time. Like if people would just slow down, right? Just slow down and take a minute, right? Like I talk about it all the time. Like get your emotions out of everything.
Oh, that's it. Exactly.
Out of everything. Like just reel them in. Like I feel like we've lost that. Like somewhere. Like nobody has emotional control. People. I use nobody, but a lot of people just don't have the emotional control to effectively communicate with people.
You know what it is? I think there was an art of this way back when, and there's a word for this art, and it's called candor. Candor meaning, listen, I am going to express my thoughts, and it's going to be said in a way that you may take offensively, but I am not trying to offend anyone. I am just delivering the message straight and to the point. And it's this communication of candor where I'm saying, listen, I don't know how to beat around the bush or make it fluffy or smooth it or add the right pronouns to it. But here's what it is. And we take such offense. Everything is, oh, I know why you said that. Like, no, you don't. I said it because it was the first thing that came to my mind. And I didn't spew it out because I was hoping to hurt you. It's just what came to my mind. I say stuff in meetings and I watch people's faces like, oh,
whoops.
I'm like, but I didn't really say anything bad. I just said, your process makes absolutely no sense. There is no instructions. There's no illustrations. There's no anything. And if I asked 10 out of 10 of you, you'd all say it doesn't work. But the guy who wrote it is sitting here. Okay. Not trying to offend him. Just trying to let him know it's not clear. Now I can beat around the bush and say, well, I was thinking maybe, and I can do this. Well, everyone knows where I stand right now. The process is written like crap. No one knows how to follow it. Let's fix it. No one's in trouble. If you're hurt by my words, like, wow, you got bigger issues. I mean, maybe that's what it is we've become so soft as a society because words have meaning and sticks and stones that like went out the window. And now it's, I'm rubber, you're glue. None of that shit works anymore. That's offensive. And I'm hurt by your words. It's like a sword in my heart. I don't know why I changed into this.
That's the reality.
Yeah. And so the communication and interpretation now is let me spin whatever shit you just said in my head and see how it offends me. But I have no intention of offending any of you. It's just my truth. My key word there, my truth. Your truth may be different. Doesn't make mine right and yours wrong and vice versa. I think that's where we are. If you want to stand your ground. But it's words. Why, famous words of Rodney King. Why can't we all just get along? Like, it's ridiculous. The words are the words. If you're going to get into a discussion, but lift yourself out and try and listen to their words from their vantage point. We don't do that. We fight and fight and fight, and they're going to understand because I'm going to win. Like, I don't remember the W's. Do you get a W when you win a fight with your wife? No one ever gets a W when you win a fight with your wife. It's usually going to come back and get you in the ass later. So, but you get my point. It's from a communication sense. There's so much to discuss here, but we're getting long now, so I'll end on this, is that first off, speak your mind. But speak your mind in a respectful way that you're not reaching out and cutting down the other person. You're just trying to communicate your feelings and your thoughts. If something needs to be said, then say it. But again, respectfully. If you're getting hurt by those words, sit back for a second, take a deep breath and listen to the words. Don't take them as a sword in your heart. They're just words. Like, deal with it. Like, is it worthy of more thought, or do you just want to react? I don't know if that made sense, but that was my pitch.
No, it absolutely makes sense. And that's, I mean, I don't know if you've ever read the Four Agreements. I've only read like the summed up, but like one of the whole things is like not taking offense. Right. And if we can just not take offense to everything that we say, if we can express what we're thinking instead of just bottling it up and just waiting to explode one day, or not communicating properly to the person that's speaking to us to make sure that the conversation ends in a positive note, right? Somebody learns, somebody grows, someone like that should be the intention all the time when having any kind of important conversation, right? If we get our emotions out of it, if we start trying to see things from other people's perspectives, like you said, I think that's a huge part of it.
Yep.
You know, and I think a lot of the turmoil, especially in our country, would dwindle away if we were to do just that one simple thing. Stop trying to make each other look stupid or self-righteous or you know, almighty or whatever, right? Like on either end, and just listen and talk in not a whiny, I get on people like in a not whiny voice,
Right.
Right? Because you don't want to tone the other person off, right? Like we would solve a lot of issues. I think we would be able to come together on a lot of stuff and be able to, you know, address the root causes of a lot of problems. I mean, in relationships and politics and in all the things. Like if we were just able to step back for a moment and talk and try to understand, I think a lot of problems could get solved.
I'm with you, and I'll end on this, and I do it in a lot of my meetings with the expectation agreement. If you can keep that in your head, you get rid of the wins and losses. An expectation, you're looking for the win over time. Like anything that's in your mindset, you're expecting the other person. It's almost like you've willed the other person. If they don't meet what I have in my head, then they are not worthy to me. But if you can spin that into an agreement of saying what came out of my mouth should have been expressed in a way that they understand, and I need to question whether or not they understood what I said. It doesn't have to be for everything. I mean, it's not like you sit there and have this conversation. Sometimes there's an expectation. Go upstairs and put your damn clothes away. You know, there's an expectation right there. If I come upstairs and it's still on your bed, someone's getting lit up. But you get my point. In conversation, like John said, we need to sit back and relax a little bit and listen to what the other person's saying from any level, whether you're a boss and an employee, a mom and a dad, a husband and a wife, whatever, a business relationship. Relax, take a deep breath. I would bet you 9 out of 10 people are not saying things in an offensive way or in a meaning to be offensive, and just go with it. And I think that's really my communication today. And hopefully you interpret it in a way that says, you know what, the idea here is let's learn to be more effective at listening and interpret what's been communicated to us, not go into our brain and go automatic. He's out to get me. Fuck him. Like, no, just having a conversation. That's my story. So communicate, people, interpret.
Yeah, I mean, you know, read a book or something. And you know what? If you're going to understand anything, any single thing that we said this entire time, it's like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can keep having fun and
have a super great day.
And also do that because that's important.
Thanks, guys. Peace.
Bye.